Well, welcome back. Or we can say, g'day, everybody. It's leading from home. And I think just got to say, next week it's a bit early, but it's Happy Australia Day for all us Aussies. So next Tuesday, the 26th, hence why I'm wearing my Australia t-shirt, the cap. Phil, Madeline, you're not Australian, but today you can be token Australians and help celebrate this weekend on Australia Day. How are you both?
Madeline?
Yeah. I was waiting.
Speechless. I know it's a big event in Australia, but practice your best g'days to us into the Australian spirit here for Australia Day weekend.
Well, I'm not sure that you want me to practice my Australian, really, but
you can always try. Like people always try the imitations of this is the knife of Crocodile Dundee and all these imitations. So practice your best Australian saying and everybody will laugh at you. So that's good.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm also very pleased to say that next Tuesday is India's Republic Day.
Oh, fantastic. So we have a double celebration next week, India and Australia.
It is. And I think the Indians will be partying harder than the Australians because they've got quite a lot to celebrate.
I just realised I stepped into a big hole when I talked about a lot to celebrate between Australia and India because, yes, all those cricketers out there, yes, Australia, we lost the test last week. We lost the series and India take the series back to India. So thanks for rubbing the salt into a very painful wound, Phil. So let's not start.
Always a pleasure.
Let's not start the podcast on a down note to spoil Australia's Australia weekend. And cricket wasn't the best thing last week. But yeah, thanks, Phil. That was really nice. On a more positive note, we'll now skip off from Australia and we can go to today's topic and talk about leading high-performing teams, which this year is going to be definitely a challenge because, as a lot of people are saying, it's resetting because of COVID challenges, remote, everything you could say is wipe the slate clean. So this is going to be a great topic to explore because a lot of leaders are in brand new territory. We have new habits. We have people who are suffering from last year with being away from their colleagues. Some people are struggling mentally, home, a lot of things. So I think being a leader has never been more important, but most importantly, creating a high-performing team and culture has never been so important because of the situation that we're all in. So, Phil, I'm going to put it straight into the hotspot. How would you like to open up? You're the expert of remote and high-performing remote and virtual teams. How would you like to start this excellent topic?
I think a good place to start for all leaders here is a bit of a mindset shift. And I think that mindset really is around how do you go around evaluating the performance of the people that you've had working for you. In complex organizations, there's always been this realization that your people may well be performing some of their time for other leaders and some time for others. And therefore you never get the full picture. So really, even before the pandemic created this working from home environment, good leaders were reaching out and seeking inputs from other people. I think there's the mindset shift is this. First of all, that's a must now. You've got absolutely no choice because you don't get the full picture of any of the people that you're working with. But if you're on the receiving end and you're getting calls from your colleagues saying, look, Phil's been working for you for the last 12 months and I know he's done some good work, but tell me something about it. It's very easy to see that as extra work. But if you think about it, the mindset shift is, look, you may be contributing to other people's inputs. They will be contributing to yours. And actually the total amount of work that you're going to do is going to be exactly the same. It's just going to be different work. So give feedback in the spirit that you're going to get feedback from others. And rather than see this as a chore, and when that email request comes in saying, look, can you spare a few minutes because I need some feedback on so-and-so, put yourself in their shoes. You're going to be asking those very same requests when it comes to getting input from your people. So do it in the spirit of cooperation, do it in the spirit of empathy. And I think that mindset shift will go a long way towards making what is a very complicated process significantly easier because you want it to be easier.
Yeah, I sort of pick up one word from there, really important, empathy. And I think I was reading a number of articles in preparation for this week And empathy was one of the words that came up quite a lot, particularly with the mental strain that teams are having, both on employees, because some are struggling for working from home, they feel isolated, and this COVID has dragged on for quite some time. But also too for leaders that being overawed with having employees like, I can't cope, or can I do this, can I do that? The stress of managing a team remotely and virtually as opposed to being close to them. So one of the biggest things of a high-performing team is that a leader needs to have a lot more empathy than they would normally have, particularly if they have not been so empathetic, if they're normally a straight shooter, to really have some empathy and not, to start off calls, it's like, how are you feeling? How are things at home, because you can't see somebody face to face as you would. So that's something which is really important as a quality to have as a leader. Madeline, with you being a leader and your remote teams, how are you preparing for this year with your team and striving for a high performing culture that you're setting out to be, which you're already doing?
I think first of all, what Phil said and what I'm picking up is don't overcomplicate things. Exactly to your point, Phil. We have all done different tasks for different kind of leaders in different kinds of the organization previously. So it's not really that big of a difference, really. What I sense is that there are many leaders who have just sort of given up during COVID and is just waiting out the pandemic to be gone, and then they can start lead again from the office. But I don't think, that's not the way it's going to happen. And I don't understand why we should wait for something that might not even happen. So I think what we talked about last week in terms of my team's accomplishments, 2020, building trust, that's the foundation for a high-performing team in my view. And when the trust is there, you can start building upon that. So that is what we are doing for this year. So we're going to come together as a team, continue to build on the foundation we already have, and leverage from that.
Exactly. I say trust is important in the better times, but even more so, like we've talked in previous podcasts about the manager giving you trust in terms of are you doing your work, rather than checking up, are you logging on, all these type of things about productivity, which I think, come on, we don't need in these times people to have added stress of having a manager call you up or checking are you online versus the dot on the red or yellow or green. So trust and flexibility must be huge things. So we have empathy and we have trust. Communication, Phil, we talked about that last week, but communication is even more so super important, because now that the main form of communication is going to be via a screen. What are some of the things about high performing teams can people take on board to help improve communication, both from a team to colleague, but also manager to employee?
I think the KISS option is absolutely the heart of it. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Keep it simple with the communication. Less is more.
Yeah.
And repetition is at the heart of effective communication. I'll just say that again. Repetition is at the heart of effective communication, because when you've got very few touch points, you really want to be reinforcing those key messages whenever you can. Simple messages being repeated, being reinforced is your best chance of something sticking.
Yeah. Madeline, how much of a lot of the things that you piloted last year with your Zoom coffees and your walk and talks have become permanent features of how you communicate with your team, or how your team is communicating with each other for this year?
I think all of it. Yeah, good question, Sean. It's I would say all of it, and together with the Zoom coffees and the walk and talks and so on, I'm continuously looking for new ways, and I'm very much keen to try out new things this spring, because I don't think that we should get stuck in the patterns that we have. And the conversation within my team is that this works well. It doesn't mean that we have to continue on this path when we feel that it doesn't longer serve a purpose.
Yeah. And do you find a lot of those suggested, or a lot of the habits that the team is forming is coming from the team rather than you trying out new things? What's the balance there between give and take?
it's very interesting. I had a conversation with one of my mentees just before this call, expressing the concern for the mentee's own team, that there were no team spirit and no team feeling, and they have tried a lot of things. But I said, sometimes it's out of your hands. Even if you try, even if you set up coffees, there must be a foundation in the team. If you don't have the trust, if you don't have anything, nobody's going to show up to these coffees. So it doesn't matter if it's the manager or if it's you setting up things. You need to have a foundation to build upon, and once you have the trust, people will show up. So I don't see that we suffer from that in this team, because I think you need to want to be there, and you need to want to spend time with your colleagues, regardless if it is at office or if it's virtually.
Yeah. And Phil, trust has been such an important theme that we've been discussing so much, and so more so this year when we talk about, reviewing people's performance, about, and getting feedback. What are some of the other ways which both a leader and a team can build up trust in their culture when it's so important for these times?
Well, we've looked at I've looked at trust and trust models over the years, and there's one word that keeps coming through time and time again. If you want to build trust, it's reliability. And that word reliability for me is absolutely at the heart of how to build trust in a very practical way when you're working remotely.
Agreed.
Yeah, exactly. And when we talk about communication and trust, I think back to a previous manager I had many jobs ago, where he when he want to find out if things been done or a question, he would spontaneously call you up. Sean, have you got a minute? I was like, well, not ideal. What do you know about X? It's like, here it is. Okay, thanks, bye. And the next day, Sean, I've been asked for an urgent question about this project you're running. What's the status? It's like, well, I'm in the middle of something. Come back to you. Okay, sure. This type of spontaneous or interrupting, communication would stress me out. When we talk about new habits, Phil, I suppose, and Madeline, both, as a leader, how important is it to have like this dialogue with your employees in terms of, having a feedback mechanism that works in terms of, hey, let's book, each week that if I need things up to your statuses, that we use our one-to-one rather than, and I'll give my feedback to you, say, hey, Madeline, it stresses me out that you call me up out of the blue whenever you need things, on a regular basis, because these days having a dot look at it every time and then having your Zoom pop up and then your phone, it must be extremely stressful for most people. So what can you recommend leaders to enforce habits that work for both people in terms of not having stressful communication inhibit their work or their well-being? Phil, do you want to start with that one? Madeline, go.
Oh, sorry, I was just jumping.
Madeline's first, go.
I've all said, Sierra has sort of the same experiences, and to my experience, it comes down to the type of person that you are. A person that's very detail-oriented and wants to micromanage is going to do that regardless if you're at the office or not. I've been phoned up at, I think, 7:30 in the morning, getting detailed questions about people in my team, why they have spent that much time last month on something. And that was when we were still at the office, and trying to answer those questions. I mean, it comes down to this type of style that you lead in. Do you want to micromanage people? Well, you're going to do that at the office too. Do you trust people? You're going to trust them at the office too. Setting up, I mean, I'm not the expert here, so I think I would rather direct the question to you, Phil, but I have the same experience as you, Sean, so probably coming back to the type of person that you are. Yeah.
So Phil, to those leaders out there who have this behavior, which is very stressful and it's very common, what recommendations can you give leaders to give their employees space, particularly when they're already stressed as it is, to have these new habits being formed for this year?
I think the thing that's often missing in these conversations is the why behind the what. And why is it that people need this? And some people have very high need for that information, but often that's actually missing in any of the conversations. All that people hear is the what they want, but they don't hear the why behind the what. So I think if managers can kind of take the time to explain why these things matter. Maybe they in turn are being micromanaged from above, and the only way that they can manage their manager is by providing that information. I mean, I would encourage them to influence upwards to actually say, do you really need that kind of level of detail? But without knowing what's behind it, you can't make those kind of assumptions. So the why behind the what will help them massively, I think, in this. And then this expectation management. So is there a way to just engage in a dialogue that says, look, for me to be at my best, I need this kind of frequency of communication. For you to be at your best, what works for you? And see if you can actually engage in a dialogue that at least mitigates against some of that micromanagement, because of actually maybe that information isn't needed, or because this person now knows the reason behind it. They're actually communicating a lot more willingly and a lot more proactively. Those are the kind of things that I would be recommending.
Yeah, excellent. Linking to this, taming the technology. Now, we talked about this again last year, but even more so with now we're focusing on the employee's well-being. Having so much blue light in your face, and at the same time having so many things beeping and buzzing and beeping like as we go in Zoom starts or everything like that. What recommendations can you have in terms of, and Madeline too, if you have these in place, to help people and employees tame their technology so that they're not always on? Because we hear about Zoom fatigue last year, but it's not just Zoom. That people's at the desk we have our phones, we have our laptops, and we have our iPads. And then if we get people like interrupting spontaneously, you're constantly wired up. What are some of the habits and high performing things that people can switch off or have control over the technology that they don't get burnt out by the increased focus on technology because of COVID is placing upon them? Madeline, you want to start off with some of the things that you've been doing?
Yeah, I think it comes back to, technology or not, or devices or whatever it might be. It all goes back to the self-leadership. So if you are disturbed or interrupted by someone or something, you need to build within yourself. You need to set up the boundaries. And I've had ongoing dialogues in regard to this, how hard it is to just close the laptop in the evening. You're just going to take one last call. You're just going to do one last thing. And you're still at home. So it doesn't matter. It's just 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden, the evening has gone. And so I think that's the hardest challenge, self-leadership.
Yeah. Or I suppose how hard is it? Well, how important is it for both the manager and the employees to set boundaries to say that, okay, after 5 o'clock, can you please, for the team, emails and phone calls throughout the team need to stop. And those type of things. I know it's difficult to think of normally, but having these common sort of habits instilled in the team now helps, I suppose, the culture of like, okay, even if I want to email Madeline for like a small question, it's 5 o'clock. I need to maintain this rule, because then it becomes a habit that at least that that I'm not going to have the urge to check my emails.
And I think the tough question here is that normally I always say, just don't email anyone in the evening. Don't do any kind of work in the evening. COVID has struck, and looking at colleagues in other countries where you have homeschooling kids, well, it's just impossible to work at the same time. So I know many of them have done that. Okay, well, during the afternoons, I'm not working. I will be working in the evening. And so do the teams as well, to maintain some kind of rhythm. I'm not saying that's healthy. I'm just saying to cope with what's going on, you need to change some kind of way of work sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think, to take, just to pick up on Madeline's point, you do. And, you've got to be pragmatic about when you work. You also have to be pragmatic about when you don't work. And so I think, to that point, Madeline, absolutely right. If you're now a dad homeschooling or a mum homeschooling, you've got those responsibilities, communicate those responsibilities out. Don't try and hide them. Don't try and mask them. And for God's sake, don't try and multitask, because nobody benefits. Your employer isn't going to be benefiting. Your children aren't going to be benefiting, and you won't be benefiting from that approach. So set the boundaries, set the expectations, but remember to switch off.
Yeah, exactly. Sticking to the topic of well-being, because I know, I say high-performing leaders are super important, but high-performance culture is even more important. And Bill, just before we talk about culture, for those, we talked about this book last week, The Culture Code. We recommend this for those who haven't read it or want to read it. Here it is. Highly recommend, particularly when culture is so important in today's world with high-performing teams and challenges. I want to reference an article through one of the companies that I'm an ambassador for, Hinsa. They produced an article just last week, Refresh Your Routines, How to Embed New Habits for More Wellbeing, Flexibility and Productivity in 2021. I'll put this in the show notes, but I think this really hit a really strong message in terms of refresh your routines. And I think this year could not be an even more important year for teams to refresh your routines, as like Madeline says, Zoom coffees, recommending people at lunchtime to do like a gym workout or take a walk outside, things that they don't normally do, but for this year people need because of you're camped up inside most of the time, you're isolated. New habits for communicating with your boss in terms of walk and talks. So everybody have a read of this article, but one of the things I want to take away from this is that for both teams and managers to reflect upon them as a team in terms of how can we be a high-performing team in terms of well-being and our health. But this year, in terms of COVID isn't going to be finishing in next month; it's going to be many months ago. So, what are the things we can prevent and to be more aware of about, as I say, having healthy sleep habits? That's looking at your phone before going to bed gives you this blue light, which decreases the amount of sleep that you are to be getting. So, being more aware of in terms of okay, yes, I need to do all my work and productivity, but being aware of what are the things that affect my health. And that's where I think more so than ever, people need to be aware as humans and as people that what am I doing that helps me be healthy at home for my kids, for work, because coming to work fatigued with poor sleep, or if you're eating at your desk at home, like just eating junk food or not eating at all, that's a slippery slope downwards in terms of there's going to increase mood swings, you're going to not perform well to your job, you're going to be short with the employees. So it's balancing that culture of your team, but also time balancing the well-being of you in terms of looking at the habits that you can set for this year based upon you are most likely going to be at home and the environment's totally changed up. So Phil and Madeline, what are some of the new habits that you're doing in terms of your own well-being, in terms of being proactive as well as looking ahead for this year, because if it's different than being in the office? Other than, I know, Phil, you're running, but...
I'll take it first. I'm clearly going to continue running, but I think the most important thing that I've done this year as a new habit is I've scheduled some thinking time into my diary. And I've actually set some time. Now, it is flexible because obviously you've got to be flexible to work with your colleagues, but I'm putting aside me time. Because it's impossible to continue to be a thought leader if you don't think.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's a tip that I got from a good friend of mine, and so I'm very grateful for it. But it's already making a difference. And it means that just for an hour and a half a day, you've got some time to just think and do some of the stuff that you've got to do, but actually just think. That's my new habit for the year.
It's interesting that you're saying that, because I have two new habits, and one of them is exactly the same. I've also put in focus time in my calendar, and I just thank Outlook for providing me with that, because it started doing that automatically, and then I started to do it myself, because it works. It's really good, and it gives me the time that I need as a leader. The second thing that I'm doing, and it sounds ridiculous when I say it, but it's going out to get some fresh air. Because I noticed, and it's stupid, but I noticed that with fresh air, I tend to be much more energized and think better. And the funny thing is that I had a walk and talk with a colleague of mine, and she was out on the same mission. And I just reflect upon that afterwards. If this was a year ago, none of us would have been out walking and talking, and especially like, oh, I needed to get out and get some fresh air. It's important for the rest of the day. Both of us said, I'm really grateful for that. So these are my 2 new habits, and they're making a difference.
Awesome. And I think you both said the same word there, grateful. And I think I'm going to add a 3rd habit to our list from the podcast, and that's gratefulness. There's an excellent book for those who struggle with it. It's called the 5-Minute Journal. I'll put it in the show notes. It basically, at the end of each day or in the beginning of each day, you basically write down what are you grateful for. And some of the best high-performing leaders, talk about high-performing, all have this habit in terms of they reflect about what are the things they are most grateful for. And it has a huge impact about decreasing stress and having a positive mindset, because if you're grateful for the things that, even like small things, that I'm grateful that I could spend half an hour with my son playing Lego. Just having those grateful thoughts means that you have positive thoughts, which means that if you're stressed out, if everything's gloom and doom and gloom, that when you actually think back to, hey, there's some great things in my life in terms of, supportive family and my fitness, then you'll think like, well, this thing at work isn't that much. So gratefulness and habits is focus time. I think, super important. So those 3 things, everybody, if you're not doing it, highly recommend you. And as I say, the high performing leaders are already doing this. As another habit, which is I came across an article this week on a funny side, is that you can buy wristbands that you can tell your boss if you're in a good mood or bad mood. So you press a button, and then your boss gets a dashboard of your team in terms of, out of my team, 20% are in a great mood and 80% are not. And the saying here that not compulsory, but it's a way for, now that people can't see them face to face, that to get a pulse about how their team is going. So guys, what are your thoughts about your teams wearing a dashboard, having your wrist set at each day you can log on saying, how is my barometer of my team, blue or red? What are your thoughts about that? Madeline, you're going to sign up and get your team with your wristband?
I'm not convinced at all. You need to sell it better than that. I think it's making it a little bit too easy for yourself as a manager instead of actually understanding how people are doing. No.
And my response to it, a good manager doesn't need a wristband.
Exactly.
And a bad manager wouldn't care if whatever the wristband said.
Very good answer. This is like the article did try and back it up and say that, for managers who, if they talk to somebody and say, how are you feeling? And say, oh, I'm fine. But if they, at the end of each day that everybody press the buttons and they say, oh, I've had a shit day, red, they get the truthful feeling. So there could be some merit in it. I'll put it in the show notes for those who are super excited. But speaking of wearables, since everyone wears garments, I actually wear this ring it's called an Oura ring, which tracks your sleep. And that's one thing which, talk about habits that I've started this year in terms of tracking my sleep, because last year, I've talked about where I'd have, especially like you, Madeline, you talk about working late in the evenings, and then one email or a report becomes next minute it's 12 o'clock, and having a lot of exercise, that sleep is super important for recovery as well as your mood. And this ring, or this app that come out of tracks your sleep, it gives you suggestions in terms of, hey, it's 10 o'clock, half an hour to your recommended bedtime. And you actually think, oh yeah, I didn't realize it's so late. It's been a super good habit that I've done, because now I turn off the TV and I'll go to bed roughly the same time each night. I don't burn the candle, and I'm getting quality 8 hours every day for this first week. And I can feel that the difference both in sport as well as my mood is so much better. So that's my habit. For those who are a bit geeky like me in terms of love wearing technology for wearables, check it out. I'll put it in the show notes. But talking about sleep in normal times, sleep is super important, regardless of a ring, wherever it is, to get between 7 to 9 hours for work, as well as with these days with having a device and a screen in front of your eyes. Really look into your sleep. Am I getting enough? Am I getting consistent sleep? And don't overestimate how important it is, rather than saying that sleep is for wimps, which some people used to think, but it's not for wimps. You'll get illness and you'll get moody, which your family will be not very happy about. We are almost out of time. And as you say, my weekend is going to be G'day Australia for the Australia weekend with no cricket. Phil talking about I'll be having a nice cold beer to celebrate with my Aussie mates over here, or virtually over Zoom. And Madeline, you've got some good news to doing for the weekend. What are you going to do to celebrate the Australia weekend over there?
I'm going to pick up my new car. It's the
Fantastic,
first car
and
that
it's not going to be Australian. What type of
no,
car have you
it's going
bought?
to be Swedish. It's a Volvo XC60.
Fantastic.
Light blue. Yes,
Yeah.
I call it the Lavender Dragon.
And like a lot of people, are you going to name your car like something, or have you?
I did.
It's called a Lavender Dragon.
Actually.
That's the name you're going to keep to it. Okay. Well,
yeah.
Next week you're going to show us a photo of the.
I will.
Where we have, I'll be having a beer and a barbecue. Madeline will be driving her super fast car. And Phil,
yep.
what's happening in lockdown UK the next weekend?
More walks, more fresh air, and just making the most of company. That's the company of my wife, because that's the only person I'm allowed to see at the moment. But just get out and about as much as possible, do a bit of running as well. So that's my weekend, and looking forward to it. We haven't got any snow here, by the way.
Well, there
So
are
just
all gone, so we're all in the same boat now. Grey, wet, windy weather, but it's a positive mindset. But
okay.
Good, excellent. We've left everybody with some excellent habits for high-performing teams. We have some good books to recommend. We have articles. We have time to focus and reflect and to be grateful. So everybody, now with lockdown, you've got a number of things to focus on yourselves and your teams to be high-performing. So good luck. Enjoy your weekend. Happy Australia Day to all us Aussies out there, and g'day. And
Happy Australia Day to you, Sean.
Thanks, guys, and speak to you next week.
Brilliant.
Thanks,
guys.
See you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.